Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, just for the drop-in session for the Pan-Regional Partnerships renewal of the principles. It's great to have you with us this afternoon. I'm joined by Paul Leinster, who will introduce himself in a second. He's a non-executive director of the Regional Partnership, and also sits on the environment subgroup, and is kind of like my key kind of rapporteur to the board for this piece of work. I'm also joined by colleagues at Bioregional, who have been engaged by the partnership to provide some additional kind of capacity and support for the renewal of the environmental principles as we go forward. So we'll be hearing from them in a short bit as well. In terms of, I suppose, housekeeping, I can see everyone's on mute, so that's good to start with. The questions as they come along could go into the Q&A box at the top. So the chat for this discussion has been disabled. The Q&A box is good. It allows us to keep in touch with the threads and allows for conversations to happen. So that's all fantastic. In terms of other bits of housekeeping, this meeting is being recorded and will be made available after this session. So bear that in mind in terms of having your camera on or off if you need it to. That allows more people across the network to be able to engage with the principles work as we go forward. Without further ado, my name is Nathan Veer. I'm the kind of like environmental program lead at the Oxford to Cambridge Pan-Regional Partnership. I've been working with the partnership for kind of getting on for about 15 months now, from a standing start to create and shape an environmental program that goes forward. One of the things that particularly struck me on working with yourselves across the environment network and with the partnership was the importance and symbolism that the environment principles that were created back in 2020 held for the region as an articulation of intent and vision and ambition for the environment and sustainability across this region going forward. So symbolic are they that they even got a particular line mention within the letter of support to create the Pan-Regional Partnership from government at the start of last year. So this is a really kind of significant piece of work. From the conversations that I had with stakeholders, many of whom are on the line today, what particularly struck me was the desire and appetite to maybe have a look at renewing them, not revising them, not starting again necessarily, because a huge amount of good work went into the creation of those environmental principles, but to make them fit for purpose, that they adapt to the context that the partnership now finds itself in, that they pick up a lot of kind of the issues and challenges that we now face today across the region. So I'm really pleased that in this first kind of real year of getting up and running, that we've got the opportunity to kind of renew and deepen the environmental principles as we go forward. Like I say, we'll have a presentation from Bioregional shortly, just to set out and introduce the kind of the themes that we're proposing that we have a look at as we kind of go through this renewal process, and also to pick up on some of the cross-cutting themes. I think there's a huge amount of opportunity, and I have to say that a lot of the feedback from you on the call has been positive so far. So I think we're on course to do some really significant work going forward. If at that point I can pause there and hand over to Paul Leinster, who's been very involved in the partnership and the time before the partnership kind of came into existence. And like when I first met Paul, the environment principles, the symbolism and the opportunity for renewing them was one thing that came out particularly clear. So if I can hand over to Paul to introduce this session and just give us some of your own thoughts on the opportunity we have here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Nathan. Thanks for the invite. And hello, everyone. A number of you, just looking down the list, I can see were involved in the development and had input into the development of the original principles. And as Nathan was saying, that was back in 2020, and was in the context of the ARC. And the ARC is, as we know, no more. But the environment principles, I think, still hold largely good. They were also in the context of, in the discussions we were having at the time, if you'll remember, people were talking about a strategic spatial framework for the ARC, and that within that spatial framework would be a material planning consideration. Now that has all gone, but a lot of the input into the design and thinking was in the context of that material planning consideration. So again, as Nathan has said, the environment principles, what we're not looking to do is to start from scratch. It's to look at them, to review them, to revise them, and to update them. There have been a number of developments since we initially drafted that first set of principles. Local nature recovery strategies are being worked on just now. Biodiversity net gain is a thing. One of the boroughs has thought about how to implement environment net gain within the planning framework as well. So how do we revise and update, I think, is the nature of the task ahead of us just now. The other thing is that I think, true to say, there was a predominance of people who were interested in the natural environment during the drafting of the initial set of principles. And therefore, when you look at the principles, there was more thinking went into the managing nature, managing land aspects than went into, for example, net zero. And there was more engagement from the Environment Working Group on some of those other areas of the managing nature area compared with the other areas. One of the other things that has become apparent over the last few years is that within the Pan-Regional Partnership, within the 5 counties, water, the availability of water, and the potential for water to be a constraint, the potential for sewage treatment to be a constraint, flood risk increasing, all points to maybe there should be a particular theme within the principles focused particularly on water. There's been a lot of work done in that area, but that is one of the things that needs to be looked at. And then circular economy, I think it was just initial thinking on circular economy in the previous set of principles. And then we need to make sure that we're dealing with climate adaptation and transition and mitigation. So work to do, opportunity to get involved, and please do get involved in this, because the more people who can provide input into these individual areas, the better. There will be the opportunity, and Nathan will no doubt describe how to do that, but there will be the opportunity for people to offer to lead on one of the groups. And please, again, do think about that so that it doesn't just come down to a small group of people who are going to do all the heavy lifting on this. So plenty of opportunity. Please do engage in the process. Thank you. And back to Nathan.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. It was when we were putting this work to the market, we're very conscious of, like I say, the symbolism and importance that the environmental principles have to a lot of people. And also was very conscious that those environmental principles were very much kind of like co-produced and produced in partnership. So we spent a significant amount of time on ensuring that the process that we're going to go through is inclusive and participative and engages with as many people as possible, so that we can create both a coherent and cohesive kind of ambition for environment and sustainability for the region going forward. And it's for that reason that we're able to obtain particularly the support of Bi-Regional as part of this work, who have an incredible amount of kind of like expertise in building and shaping work from the ground up that engages with you all, and that was something that was particularly important going forward. I'll like to hand over to the colleagues at Bi-Regional now, who have a short presentation that they'd like to work through that will give a little bit about how they see themselves fitting into this process. We'll kind of like go through some of the themes that we think we should be looking forward to working with, and some of the programme for how you can get involved going forward. So if I could hand over to colleagues at Bi-Regional, then the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Hopefully you can all see our screen, if that's okay. Can I, Nathan, can you give us, yeah, brilliant, we've got a thumbs up, that's super. Yes, thank you. My name's Lewis Knight. I'm joined by my colleague Nina Wallace, and also our colleague Thomas is also on the call as well. Thank you very much, Nathan and Paul, for that introduction. So, just as a reminder, fairly short presentation, I hope, but yeah, we're going to give you a really brief overview of the project. So, a little bit about who we are, and outline the context, the aims, and the process on how we're going to renew these environmental principles. We're just going to do a really quick overview and a bit of a reminder as to what the current principles are, and a bit of our sort of high-level review of where we see their strengths and also the opportunities within those current principles for improvement through our co-creation process. And then just a bit of a quick view of some of our initial ideas of how we're going to renew those principles, and a little of the thinking as to why we think those changes need to happen. And then, as Nathan said, just a bit of our process for how we're going to go about this bit of work. So hopefully interesting, and yeah, Nina's in charge of the slides, so there we go. Thank you, Nina. Just through to the next one, that's okay. So hopefully, there we go. Hopefully some of you may have heard of Bi-Regional, but you can see there on the top right hand side there, that's BedZ, based in South London. That was our home for about 20 years. It's where our co-founder and chief exec still lives, and is sort of one of our flagship projects. But really, for about 30 years, we've been helping businesses and communities to respond to the challenge of overconsumption and climate change. And sort of BedZ is one of the most sort of visual examples of that. But we kind of work in these two camps, and I'm about to show you a sort of a Venn diagram in a minute, but we support businesses with their sort of corporate footprinting and strategy, and then we also have a very strong heritage in the built environment world, supporting developers, but also increasingly over the sort of last decade, working with local authorities on their policy creation and sort of vision development. And just personally, I've worked in and around Oxfordshire for about 11 years since I've been with Bi-Regional, and I've been sort of leading a lot of the climate action strategy across Cherwell, and also on the UK's first eco-town based in Bicester. So I live locally and have quite a lot of sort of vested interest in this. And just a little plug there, you can see me looking like a penguin on the right-hand side. That was us picking up Consultancy of the Year award last year as well. So we think we're doing something right. So we're very grateful to Nathan and team for choosing us, because we're really excited about working on this project. So as I said, this is who we work with when it catches up. There we go. So we work with some well-known names in the business world. We work with some well-known people in the places world, in the sort of built environment, but increasingly we're doing a lot of work with policy. So we're currently supporting about a dozen local authorities at the moment, principally across sort of southern England, on their policy creation and climate action responses. So that's just a really quick overview of us. And so who's going to be working on this project with you? So there's myself. I lead our Sustainable Places team. We're a team of about 11, and we'll be supported by my colleague Joe, who brings about 15 years worth of public sector experience leading climate action for a London borough. And will be supported very capably by Nina and also by Thomas. And it's really important to say we're also being supported by our partners. So we've got 2 partners on this project who crucially bring a real interesting dynamic to this. So Oxfordshire Green Tech and Cambridge Clean Tech, who at either end of the partnership are business networks that will be bringing some of their sort of membership and some of their sort of more diverse views to this, and they will be helping with the co-creation and the kind of facilitation of our different groups. So that's who you'll be working with. And so just a little bit about the context of this project. I think Paul did a really good job just giving an overview there. So you've already got these principles that relate to the Oxford to Cambridge arc. Lots has happened since the creation of those in the early 2020s, and it now means that there's this opportunity to update and basically modernise these in line with the aims and aspirations of the Pan-Regional Partnership. And exactly as I think Paul and Nathan said, is we're not sort of chucking everything out and starting again. It's very much looking at what's there, because there's some really, really good work there, but it's looking at how those changes have meant different opportunities and different challenges across the partnership area, and how can we renew and build on those. And so we're just going to do a little bit of a view through what the current the principles are in a minute, which hopefully will be useful. So how is this project going to be run? So exactly as Nathan said, this is a collaborative co-creation process driven by you, the stakeholders. We're not going to sit there in our ivory tower, create these principles and go, what do you think of these, and not really listen. That's not why we're here. We're here to listen to you. We're here to create these principles in partnership with you. So we're going to be hosting a series of interactive workshops using lots of online collaborative tools to capture a load of different, hopefully diverse range of perspectives. So we actually look forward to that sort of mediation and that sort of consensus building discussion. Hopefully we'll have lots of different views, and we'll have to try and bring that all together into one sort of view. So we are bringing the experience, we're bringing the expertise, but also crucially for Nathan, we're bringing that capacity, we're bringing the time and the dedication of time to sort of do this, the due service that it needs. So the different roles, you, the stakeholders, you're going to be the key agents there to drive that content. We're going to help hopefully point and direct, but really we're very much in listening mode for that. We, Bioregional, will be sort of facilitating this this project. We'll be helping to generate those kind of seeds of discussion, and definitely help bring that kind of consensus and sort of mediation, and sort of bring that together into hopefully a final output. And we'll be leaning on our 2 sort of business partnerships to help in the support in that facilitation, but also bringing some more of those diverse views from the private sector, particularly in those areas that I think Paul mentioned that maybe weren't as reflected strongly enough in the existing principles. So that's us. That's how the process will run. I'm just going to do a really quick run through, really, of where the current principles are, or what they are, and we just got some boxes here that just give some fairly high level views on what we think is the current strength of the principles, but also crucially where we think there are opportunities to improve them. So the first one very much is around achieving net zero carbon across, as was the ARC, by 2040. So we think it's a really clear goal. It gives some real good direction, and also crucially for a principle, or it gives a time frame. It's fairly comprehensive in the fact that it talks about at an ARC level, so covering new development, infrastructure, planning, building regulations, etc. And also it really emphasises the point on collaboration. To achieve that at an ARC level, everyone needs to be on board. Some of the areas really for us to focus on here are, what does net zero carbon mean? So really, like, what metric are we looking at? So really, that's where we're going to be sort of diving into, and I'll show that in a latter slide. So Marina, onto the next. Nina, sorry, onto the next one. So here, I guess, is what Paul was talking about. Was there's a real when we reviewed the existing principles, there's a real strong focus on protecting, enhancing, and creating new natural areas, and really building on the natural landscape that exists across the ARC. So again, this principle is really comprehensive. It gives a number of ambitious and also measurable targets, particularly around doubling the area managed for nature, exceeding net gain, national minimas. Talks about increasing tree cover to 19%, and it really talks about collaboration with landowners, government, but also the third sector as well. So lots of real strengths here. Some of the areas for us to focus on, very much around the role that nature can play in adapting to climate change. That I guess, if I was to say, is one area. That's probably the one area we want to try and pull through all the new principles as a whole. We need to probably look at more consistent metrics, and also crucially around how do we engage the public, who are a really important stakeholder to consider. So looking to raise awareness and activating their support is equally importantly an aspect of this particular principle. And I think here as well, there's no mention of equity within this principle. So how do we ensure that access to nature is really equitable for everyone within the partnership? So this concept around a just transition, I think, is something that has really gained momentum over the sort of last 4 to 5 years, perhaps, when these principles were first created. Next slide, if that's okay. And again, this principle is giving a really good level of ambition, particularly about becoming an exemplar. So the ARC becoming an exemplar and exceeding sort of minimum legislative requirements. It links to the government's 25-year plan, which could be a real gateway to future funding opportunities. This one really starts to knit together the kind of more systems thinking of sustainability and that more holistic view of sustainability. So it starts to knit together points around health, well-being, the economy, and the environment. And it also, again, talks about collaboration, which is obviously the sort of overarching theme, I think, through all of these principles. But some of the areas for us to focus on, very much around metrics and monitoring, to crucially track progress, but also to ensure accountability. We can start to weave in elements around community engagement, and again, this point around equity and social impact within this principle. How do we ensure that we're bringing everyone along within this principle and within this journey? I think it's the penultimate one here. Mm-hmm. That's okay. Yeah. This principle here really is looking at the sort of more health and well-being elements of the environment. And it does begin to address previous weaknesses identified regarding access to nature and wilderness and wildlife. It talks about very much around the future growth of the region by talking about ensuring that existing and new communities begin to see the benefits from living across the Arc. And it also mentions Natural England's access to natural green space standards, which again provide really good benchmarks. So building on the previous slide, some of the areas for us to think about and focus on as we begin to renew these principles is around metrics and monitoring to track progress, and again, accountability. Management, so how do we ensure long-term management of our green spaces, and will funding become a barrier to that if we don't address this earlier? And again, community engagement. This is really an easy win for this principle. So we should look to include commitments about engaging with stakeholders meaningfully to ensure that their needs are sort of articulated and met. So lots to think about on that principle. And just the final principle here, which is around using natural resources wisely. Again, the strengths are it's a very comprehensive principle. It includes, so it's not just the words on the screen now. There's a whole lot of text that goes with that. So this principle includes everything from water resources to soil regeneration and management, to waste, to air quality. It talks about sustainable agriculture, extraction of minerals across the Arc. So within one principle, that's a lot to cover. Again, it talks a lot about collaboration. It talks about nature-based solutions, and particularly relating to soil and flood management, which really aligns with the benefits of natural ecosystems to create resilience and also adapt to the impacts of our changing climate. So some of the areas for us to focus on, again, there's a sort of fairly common theme here, which is around the need for clear metrics and monitoring. And also this one, I think there's the potential here to sort of break this down a bit more. There's such a broad range of topics covered within this principle that it doesn't quite give perhaps the sort of detailed strategic activity that each of those areas, particularly around water, as sort of Paul was talking around, particularly around the water scarcity issue. So lots to work on, lots to build on. Lots for us to sort of start to think about as we move into the sort of collaborative renewal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give a really quick overview, a bit of a sort of early view on where our thinking is, particularly with the kind of new principles. So Nina, if that's okay, we'll just go through. So we're thinking very much a principle on net zero carbon on its own. So it does build on that first principle that we shared, that has a much greater focus, particularly on the built environment around regional energy planning, but also transport and sustainable infrastructure. So really trying to sort of draw that out. And then the second principle, very much around nature and land. So built on the really good work of the previous principles, but has a greater focus on the role of nature in terms of climate resilience, but also the economic and social benefits of nature recovery and regenerative nature work. So again, nothing sort of massively new and different there. The third principle here really built on the activity taking place across the region to synthesise and capture the collective regional ambition and also necessity to address water security. Water quality is very topical, as most of you will know. The issue of water quality affecting our waterways is probably one of the biggest issues that we're facing, but also around flood resistance challenges, how water supports agriculture, and also the role of water in sort of water quality and sustaining our diverse ecosystem. So really bringing this through as its sort of its own principle in its own right. And then the fourth one here is really focused on the circular economy. So builds on that previous principle around natural resources, but updates the language that really has come into its own over the past sort of 4 to 5 years around circular economy. So this reflects the current industry sort of wording and kind of vernacular and the sort of trends coming out from industry. So focuses on this requirement and this necessity to move away from a linear economy, of sort of taking natural resources, making things with it, and then just disposing of them, moving towards a more circular economy, a more sort of regenerative economy, where we're looking to keep products and materials in the system for longer. So designing in longevity. It will look at, well, there's the potential to look at supply chain risks associated with the circular economy and also resource scarcity, but looks at the kind of multi-sector ambitions that are prevalent across the partnership within key sectors such as manufacturing, construction, and also agriculture. And then the fifth one here is really looking at climate adaptation. So recognising that adapting to climate change is going to be one of the biggest challenges that we face within the region. We're already facing it. So no matter what we do around mitigation, you know, that needs to be our sort of primary focus needs to be how do we stop emitting emissions, but we need to understand that a lot of those impacts are already locked in. Looks at the need for collective action to allow the region to adapt to the impacts of climate change. So we'll look at identifying and acknowledging the climate risks within the partnership region, but also looking at the opportunities for coordination and activity as well. So that really are the kind of 5 core, what we're calling special interest groups, and we'll come on to the process in a minute as to sort of how we're going to collectively build on those. But I thought we'd just say that it's very important that we don't just look at those 5 sort of emerging areas in isolation. So in addition to the 5 proposed renewed principles, we want to allow the opportunity to incorporate a number of cross-cutting themes that we'll look to integrate and also acknowledge across those 5 principles, so that we have a very holistic picture of the environment. One way of looking at this is what are the co-benefits and conversely the unintended consequences of particular activities and projects. So when we go through this co-creation process, we really want to encourage you, our stakeholders, and also others to think about how we can design a set of principles that actively facilitates and highlights the co-benefits of doing particular projects and activities. For example, when thinking about land and nature, can we apply a social impact or equity lens to explore how we can make access to nature far more equitable for everybody? And it's important just to note here around historic and cultural environment, and this will also cut across all the themes, but particularly around net zero carbon, circular economy, and climate adaptation. For example, in terms of the need to retrofit and decarbonise our historic buildings that are very prevalent across the entire partnership, not just within Oxford and Cambridge, as well as how do we adapt those to the future climate impacts, particularly around heat stress and flooding. So it's not just those 5 principles, we are very much thinking around these cross-cutting themes. So that is a bit of a whistle-stop tour as to sort of who we are, what we're doing here, what you've currently got, what we think are the strengths and opportunities to sort of work on, but also our emerging thoughts on where we think the renewed principles might go. So just going to touch on here is what's our process and timeline. So as I just mentioned, we're going to form 5 special interest groups that will link to each of those 5 principles. They'll be made up of you, the regional partnership, regional stakeholders, so that will include local authorities, public bodies, academic institutes, third sector organisations, but also crucially private sector businesses. So we've already started to do an element of stakeholder mapping. We're just mapping in the membership across the 2 business networks as well. That gives us a really good focus as to sort of who we want within each of those 5 special interest groups. And those 5 principles, or those 5 themes, is where we will renew those principles with you within each of those special interest groups that will be facilitated by ourselves and obviously the 2 business networks. So our process, we're going to convene 2 online workshops. So one will be held in the coming weeks in July, and then we will use that first opportunity to discuss, throw around ideas, really begin to kind of map out what can sit within each of those principles. We'll then go away over the summer, revise them, bring back some consensus, hopefully. During that time, we might reach out again specifically to some stakeholders, but then we want to reconvene ourselves after the summer in September with a kind of revised principle that we can, a revised group of principles that we can then begin to discuss again. So each of those workshops will be chaired by one stakeholder, so we will be looking for kind of volunteers for that. Bi-regional will be doing all of the legwork, so we'll provide the agendas and discussion papers ahead of all of those workshops. So really, the one ask of you, and we've got a slide on this, is just come with your experience and your ideas, and sort of we'll do the hard work and kind of hoping to bring that all together. So just sort of a bit more of a visual sort of timeline. So as I said, each of those 5 principles will have their own workshop in July. We're going to then feedback and we're going to collate that feedback and use that as a way to sort of draft our first draft of revised principles. Have a second workshop with each of those 5 special interest groups to sort of break cover on where we think revised principles are. Hopefully agree. Hopefully have a level of consensus and agreement. Use that final feedback to then present back to Nathan and team a sort of final collated set of revised principles. So hopefully have something within kind of mid to late autumn on that. So we've just got some dates here. So for each of the 5 principles or special interest groups, we've already sort of got these dates that are emerging. We're going to host these online to make them as accessible to people as possible. And don't worry about sort of jotting these down right now. We'll send round the slide deck afterwards, and also we have a sign up QR code. We have a sign up sheet. If that's right, Nina. So I will just pause in 1 second. There is the QR code to sign up. So this is for you to express an interest in joining one or several of the special interest groups. You don't have to just choose one. We actively want you to sort of sign up to as many as possible. We'll then obviously send you the details of how and when to join the workshops. And ahead of each of these workshops, we're going to send a discussion paper that will outline the agenda, a bit of a terms of reference for that group, but also outlining our thoughts and ideas of where the principle might go. We really encourage you to read that before. Then if you can attend both workshops, I think it's really important for us to have a level of continuity. If you join that first one, we'd really like you to join that second one in September, because then we can get an idea of whether or not we've captured your ideas coming from that first workshop. So that, I think, concludes our presentation. I'm going to leave the QR code up just for maybe another sort of 30 seconds, a minute, Nathan, if that's all right. I know we've now got some time to answer any questions, if that's okay. We're running a bit blind our side. We can't see any of the Q&A because we've got the presentation on the big screen. But Nathan, I didn't know if there's anything coming from your end if you wanted to join in now.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, we've had a few questions on the Q&A. I'm kind of gradually going through them and picking them up as we go. I suppose what would be interesting is just what your thoughts are with regards to the general election and a possibly different kind of government that might bring forward, I suppose, a change of emphasis in policy and environmental sustainability strategy going forward. So just wondered whether you had any thoughts on how the process that we're kind of setting out could be adaptive to whatever comes forward over the next couple of months.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm going to sort of answer a question with a question. I'm going to do my best sort of politicians. No, I was going to say I think it actually gives us a really big opportunity, because it gives us the opportunity to potentially influence the new government, which is looking increasingly likely. Not going to soothsay at all, Nathan, there, but I think it's something for us to be mindful of. And I think crucially, the way we've designed it with having some time in between each of the two workshops means that if anything happens, because acknowledging our first workshop is going to follow quite quickly after the general election, I think probably sort of 5 to 6 days, the first workshop will follow afterwards. So I think we'll have to be mindful of that. It will be a material consideration that as we're coming with our ideas, when all the stakeholders are coming with the ideas, we really have to be mindful of that things may change, but also that the opportunity that actually brings is that we might have the opportunity to influence policy. Yeah. Do you want anything from yourself, Nathan, on that point, perhaps?
I think it's I suppose all I'd say in the context of this work, probably an early election is better than a later one. And I think as we move forward, and between the workshop sessions in July and September, I think we could create certainly a process that's adaptive to what comes forward. But at the same time, I think it's clear that these issues aren't going away. So I think if anything, there might be an oscillation, there might be some more prioritization in one area than another, but the themes will remain the same. So I think it's a case for us to be mindful of what comes forward, and I think we have a process that could be adaptive to that. I'm going to group a couple of other kind of like questions together. Obviously, and I've certainly been aware of it since working with the partnership, is that there's a huge amount of work already taking place across the region at a local level, whether that be on climate change or nature recovery. And we know the LNRS kind of like process is well established. I suppose I'd like your thoughts on how we can kind of like acknowledge and I suppose engage with the work that's already taking place, and how the workshops and the participation going forward can I suppose can harness the groundswell of activity that's already taking place across the region. So I just wonder whether you had any thoughts on either the workshops or any of the pre-work that you're planning on setting out as to how we could kind of like reflect the huge amount of work that's already taking place across the region.
Yeah, again, I mean, I know quite a bit of the action that's happening at a local level, but probably only at sort of one end of the partnership. So I know the massive amount of work that's happening, for example, across Oxfordshire, you know, particularly around retrofit, but also particularly around sort of new build planning policy. So I think really this is something that we're going to be really asking the stakeholders to come to those workshops with. Is their view on this works? This has worked really, really well. Like, is there the opportunity to kind of replicate and learn from that across the partnership? So I think what we're not trying to do is we're not trying to create a detailed action plan for action across the partnership. What we're trying to do is distill all of the great things that are happening, and there's loads happening across the partnership, and really try and distill that into these high level, you know, they will have to be high level sort of visionary principles. So I think what we really want are these tangible examples of best practice and also impact as well, because I think that what we really want is we want to say, hey, these are what the partnership area wants to try and do or should be trying to do, and we're already doing elements of that. We want to probably sort of scatter a few real interesting best practice case studies within our final set of principles, because that gives it legitimacy, really, because we can say that it's actually happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. I've got a hand up. Peter Bates, if you'd like to ask your question, please.
Hello. Yes, it's not a clear kind of question as such. It's more a thoughts, which I'm not quite sure kind of where. I guess the question would be, where is it all going? I'm one of my hats I now wear is I'm chair of the East Cambridgeshire Climate Action Network. I used to run the Cambridge Clean Tech Sustainable Smart Homes Special Interest Group. And you said that you were talking about engaging with local community groups. And in fact, in the last 12 months, there have been an awful, as you were saying, Nathan, there were an awful lot of things actually have been happening, which actually from a community group perspective, it becomes a bit overwhelming as to which activity we should get involved with or not involved with. So that's one kind of thought which lead on to a question of where's it going to. Another thought is, where are the geographical barriers to this? Because clearly, East Cambridge has an influence on East Cambridgeshire, which is to the north and east of Cambridge, and vice versa as well. So, does it extend beyond the 2 points of the city halls of Oxford and Cambridge? And then the other dimension of it is, well, okay, but if it does extend across there, there's already talk within the, I filled in a questionnaire this morning for the local nature-based recovery strategy for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. I think it was them anyway. And then they're talking about what the possibility of from a nature perspective, linking up Wickham Fen, which is in East Cambridgeshire, with the Great Fen, which is in Fenland, leading on to the Peterborough. And there's another strand there. So it's, just where is this exercise actually going to lead to? Is the question. I understand the big thing, Cambridge and Oxford and working together is a powerful force in that respect. But yeah, those are my thoughts and rather nebulous questions. Sorry.
No, that's great. No, thank you very much for that. I would suggest immediately just keep doing what you're doing. I suppose it's a case of kind of where we exert the control and influence, because we all have only so much time in the day. The geographical extent of the pan-regional partnership covers the ceremonial counties of Northamptonshire, Cambridgeshire, Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire, and Oxfordshire. So quite a wide area, and particularly from the conversations that I've been having with government agencies and nature partnerships and responsible authorities that are involved, just picking up on local nature recovery strategy immediately is I suppose what would be the emerging kind of priorities for nature recovery that could be taken forward on a landscape scale, the ones that cross kind of like responsible authority boundaries. And so I think there's that opportunity going forward as to what those principles might be, not to duplicate. We're not the partnership isn't necessarily a policy making body in that sense, but I think the opportunity is for the region to create a strong, clear, cohesive and coherent voice by which we can engage with government, engage with other sectors on kind of like a number of different kind of like areas of work, whether that's net zero or the circular economy or nature recovery, so that we can ensure that we can create kind of like strong, connected kind of habitats going forward. For example, on things like net zero, you know, there are lots of, in climate change, there are going to be lots of climate policy, climate objectives going forward, and I think the opportunities again on climate change is for the region, across those areas, to kind of like articulate and kind of like set out an ambition for adapting to climate change, mitigating against the effects of climate change, and where we would want to go going forward. So it's really a bit like kind of like pulling those different strands together, so that we can represent the region with a clear voice going forward. Let me have a look. So we had another point around who we're planning to influence with the principles. So like I say, this is about creating a strong voice across the region on a range of different opportunities, so that we can kind of engage with current government bodies on how we can tackle opportunities to address kind of like water challenges using a whole range of different opportunities and objectives. So I'll set this out a lot more. I think you've given us lots of kind of like food for thought going forward, and we'll kind of like bundle this up and get the invite to the QR codes, so you can put yourselves assign yourselves to a task group going forward. As Paul said, what we're particularly keen on obtaining is kind of like leads for each of those principles going forward. That's very important, because I think that we get that accountability and ownership in the region, so that the principles actually kind of like reflect the intents and desires of its partners and stakeholders going forward. So please do that. We'll send that out and circulate that going forward. So follow the link, click and subscribe, as they say. I'm conscious that time is now 4:55 on a Monday afternoon, and I'm sure there are lots of other things for people to be doing. Life continues. So I'll just hand over to Paul, who's come back on my screen, and ask whether you had any closing thoughts, please.
No, just the final ones, which are, please get involved in this process, because it's by getting involved in the process that we can start fleshing these out and then looking at how they can best be used. One of the ways, even though this isn't informing a strategic planning framework, one of the ways that we will land a lot of this intent is through the planning process. The local planning process will be a really important aspect of that. And as Nathan has said, the intent is not to duplicate anything, but if we can signpost and we can collate and we can coordinate, then that would be great. So plenty to do. I think that when we were doing the first principle, also wondered what will happen to them, and they took on, in a way, a life of their own. And I think this second set of principles, which will be signed up to by the pan-regional partnership, so the pan-regional partnership will sign up to them. One of the things that we would then like is that all members of the pan-regional partnership would sign up to them. We would like infrastructure providers like National Highways and East-West Rail operating within this geographic area to sign up to them. So there's plenty of opportunity for people to to sign up to these challenges and challenging ambitions. So please do get involved.
Thank you. And just a final one coming to colleagues back at Bioregional. Do you have any thoughts?
No, we were just we're just reading the Q&A bits, Nathan. So what we're just gonna, there's some really good points. We're just picking up one, particularly around, we talk a lot about holistic thinking and systems thinking, but I think someone, I think it might be James, it's really small on my screen, said it's obviously it's good to break things up, but how do you ensure that when you break things up, you actually ensure that there's continuity across them, and that those principles are then interlinked. So what we're just suggesting, that Nina and I were just saying, was, if we can get a list of these questions, Nathan, then we can make sure that we think about this, because this is a real opportunity for us to hear really initial views and thoughts that will help us when we're devising each of our workshop. Like how do we ensure that each of the other special interest groups know what each other is saying and what's doing, and that we don't compete with each other really, or that we don't repeat each other and double up. So yeah, there's some really, really good sort of food for thought here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Paul?
Yes, just building on that, I think just addressing that point that James makes, which I think is an excellent point. I think one of the things that we need to have a think about is then putting in, either at the end of the first set, well, at two stages. One would be at the end of the first stage set of workshops, and then at the end of the second set of workshops, another group which looks at the coherency of the overall package. And I think that some work to be done there on synthesizing the key overarching messages, as well as looking at the individual strands, would be well worthwhile.
Fantastic. And at 4:59, I'll thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon, taking part and listening. We're going to get a lot more information out to you, particularly on how you can get involved in the workshops going forward, and I look forward to hearing any other thoughts that you'd like to share with us. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much again, and enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to your involvement going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, then. Bye.
Bye. We're just sticking around to copy and paste the Q&A
Yeah, that's okay.
section.
I've got a list of all the questions that I can send around as well.
Great.
Right,
Thanks.
if I end, like it, read AI, is that a Teams thing? I think that's a Teams thing. Is it still here? It's doing the recording and the transcription and stuff.
What does it say?
It's the recording.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully that hit the spot for you, Nathan. Is that okay?
Yeah, that was great. Yep, I think this is just us now because I stopped the other thing. So there's me, thee, and Tom. Yeah, it was great. Yep, thank you. I tried to deal with most of the questions as they came in.
Yeah, I saw that. Thanks for responding. We'll copy them over and see if there's anything that wasn't responded to as well.
Yeah, I think it would be good if, Nathan, we can send the slide deck with the QR code, maybe pull the QR code out into the actual email body itself, and then if there's 2 or 3 questions, we can just go, building on the really positive workshop, because obviously I presume you'll send that out to a much wider readership than just the people that attended, so it gives that kind of
of
energy, that kind of momentum. You can say, here's some responses to some questions. So
yeah, I'll send you that. I think I made some change. I don't know if you've got the most recent version of the slides, Nathan, so I'll PDF this one and then I'll send it to you now.
Let's try and catch up in the next day or so, once we've kind of like slept on it, and then we'll get that back out, because my circulation list has 105 people on it, so we'll get it all back out there and get people to sign up and all of that kind of stuff, so we can talk that through over the next couple of days. I think it's a case of, I think some of the I think it will come forward and will resolve itself. I think it's a case of kind of like building things from the ground up, isn't it? You know, some of the land use framework for England from the FFCC, the Food Farming and Countryside Commission. It's you know, it's just been clear that we're not spatial planning authority, and it's looking to take the essence of what's coming out of it and how we can take that going forward, rather than trying to set a new policy direction for things.
That's what I was saying to Nina. We were just having a chat whilst we were muted. Was one of the things will be around expectation management, both sides, in the sense that managing the expectation that we're not trying to replicate anything. What we're trying to do is we're trying to pull together everything that's great, but then on the other hand, managing the expectation of what this can do. So it's the sort of risk of doing something that it shouldn't, and then also the risk of it doing something that people want it to do that it can't. And so I think that will have to come out quite strongly. I mean, I think you and Paul and myself did that. We mentioned that about 4 or 5 times each, you know, that this is not replacing anything, you know, it's not trying to do something that it can't, you know. So I think that probably has to come out quite strongly during our first workshops.
Yeah.
So cool. Nathan, I need to jump into to another workshop across the way.
No, so yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, that's cool. That's fine. All right, let's call it a day.
Thanks.
Speak to you soon. All right, thank you guys. All right, cheerio. Bye bye.